Hello and welcome to the next video in this short course in understanding anxiety, and we're going to move forward now and to look at the mind, the brain and the body connection. And immediately after this video there is a guided meditation, visualization, self-hypnosis session for you to try. I'm going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of this video, and initially a little bit about how I define and describe the mind, the brain and the body and how they work together. I'm also going to start to think about the subconscious mind. We all have an experience of the subconscious, and as part of the MindWorks complete course, there's a section in there that I call the map of the subconscious. That I believe that there are about 9 or 10 things that our subconscious mind is continually doing for us in terms of our physiological health, our physical health, our environment, our relationships, and that it is constantly working for us in order to try and help us to navigate our way through life. And I'll give you a very brief summary of those 9 or 10 things that I think that the subconscious mind is doing. And during that more detailed course on the subconscious mind in the MindWorks, which is coming for you towards the end of this month, then you'll get my understanding, my take on the subconscious mind from a hypnotherapy perspective and a psychological perspective, and also looking at it from a neurobiological and physical structure perspective, as it is something that sometimes feels ethereal and abstract and impossible of definition, but I think it's much more straightforward than that when we think about it from a human experience point of view. So let's get into this video for today. We're thinking about the mind, the brain and body connection. As I said before, this is for information and education purposes. It isn't a replacement for one-to-one therapy, but I do believe that understanding about, in this video, the mind and brain and body connection is absolutely crucial and essential if we want to work towards overcoming our experience of anxiety. And I hope that this course and all the content within the MindWorks with Craig plugs some of the gaps that may exist as I see them in terms of psychological education. So we are talking about the mind, the brain and the body. How I define the mind is our individual psychology, our subconscious and our conscious, our thoughts and our emotions. That's pretty straightforward. The brain being the physical structure, i.e. the organ in your head, and the fact that your brain is connected to the outside world through your eyes and your senses, and it is also connected to every single cell and every single organ in your body through the nervous system. That we need to think about, or from my perspective, need to think about the brain and the nervous system being the brain. It is one complete system that is connected throughout your entire body. And then the body, we've got everything else, i.e. everything neck down, including all of your systems of your body, cardiovascular system, your digestive system, your immune system, all of these systems, an entire ecosystem that exists within the inside of you. It makes up one complete system, and that none of it is separate from each other. Our thoughts aren't separate from our physical body, that we experience our emotions physically, because our brain, where our mind creates our emotions within our brain, and then our brain communicates that through the nervous system throughout our entire body, and it has effects and impacts on all of the different systems of our body throughout the course of our lives. When we have a thought, our mind makes it real. Let's just think about that from a very traditional psychological experiment which is often referenced, called Pavlov's dog. It is where dogs were, a bell was rung and a dog was fed, and the dogs became what we call in psychological terms conditioned to the sound of the ringing bell, to expect that they would be fed and they would receive food as after the bell had rung. And what was found is that when the bell was rung, the dogs began to salivate, i.e. they were physically preparing for eating food as a result of the bell being rung. So our mind makes our thoughts real. You may be thinking, well, that's dogs. Dogs are mammals, as we are. We have the same specific structures within our brain in terms of emotional state as all mammalian life. And we'll talk about the 7 different emotional systems that exist within our brain in the full course. and the individual chemistries and individual structures that transmit and modulate and create those emotions within the brain and the mind, and therefore the brain and therefore the body. So the mind makes it real, as the same is true of all thoughts. The mind uses the brain as a prediction engine based on the resources we have available, and then what has gone before in our lives, the things that we've experienced, and then the brain communicates this to the rest of the body in order to prepare. And the thing that we might be thinking about is the fight or flight response. When we feel anxious, then different structures in the brain, principally the amygdala, fires up something called the hippocampus, pituitary, adrenal axis, which communicates down through to our adrenal glands, which sit on top of our kidneys to release stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. So the experience of of anxiety is a full body one that we have throughout our entire body, the organs of our body, and the chemistry and the workings of our body. But the subconscious mind, the areas of our brain that we don't have direct conscious control of, are doing most of the work. But I don't believe that the subconscious mind is anything ethereal or abstract. I think it's just understanding at a fundamental and foundational level what we mean by emotion, what we mean by the fight or flight response, how our internal and individual psychology is processing our environment around us, our relationships, and everything that's going on within our body in order to help us to navigate the way through life. It's often said that our subconscious mind is processing 2 million pieces of information every single second. That's everything that's going on within us and all of the information that we're constantly bombarded with from our external world. And that is why, for me, a meditation practice, and I've got 10 different types of meditation practice and breathwork practices coming up for you in that section of the course, I think is absolutely vital. And we'll talk about that as we move through the rest of this video. So I said that we'll talk briefly about the subconscious mind. There is a section in the MindWorks course called the Map of the Subconscious, and in that I go through the 9 or 10 different functions that I believe our subconscious mind is doing for us, or is operating for us as we go about through life. This is my take, this is my theory, this is my opinion. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it, you can find other different models that exist about how other therapists, how other psychologists, how other neurobiologists think of it. This is simply my take. If it resonates with you, great. This is how I approach it for my own life and with my clients. So the first thing that I think our subconscious mind is doing is processing the information of our external senses, our sight, our sound, taste. Everything that's going around us is going into our brain, into our mind, through our external senses. It may be that you've had that experience perhaps when you bought a new car. You think, oh, I bought a new car, you don't see in this colour very often, or you don't see this model or this make very often, and then you're driving down the road and then it seems like every other car coming in the opposite direction is the same as the car that you've just bought, but you've never noticed before. We have a system in our brain called the reticular activating system, which is programmed contextually based on our life experiences. So we see the things we are expecting to see, but that happens outside of our conscious awareness. If you lose your keys or your wallet or your purse, and then you're looking around, then your brain knows the shape of your keys, your wallet, or your phone, your purse, whatever it might be, and you are then highly tuned into looking for that object. That is happening more at a subconscious level than I think we realise. So the first thing that I think our brain is doing, our subconscious mind, is processing the information from the outside world. The next thing I think it's doing is processing what I call internal senses. So there's lots of chemistry, there's lots of working going on within your body. It's constantly changing, and your brain is detecting that through different areas, principally your heart rate, your blood pressure, your hydration levels, the amount of energy you've got, if you're hungry, if you need to use the bathroom, this type of thing. And it's managing all of these things for you. You don't have to consciously think when you become hungry. You don't have to consciously think when you become thirsty. And also, it feels like we don't have conscious control when we have a shift in our emotional state. And our body, the structures of our subconscious brain are processing that information for us. We could think of our emotional state as being the presentation of all that is going on with us, going on with us internally at any given time. The next bunch of things that I think our brain is doing are more subtle and more nuanced, and this is how I've broken it down into the 5 main psychological processes that I think our subconscious mind is doing based on our own individual psychology and our own individual interactions that we have through life. I think we think about who we are in any given situation. So right now I'm Craig and I'm a therapist and I'm talking about psychology, and I know who I am in this situation. If you asked me to do a presentation on how to fly a Boeing 747, I wouldn't know how to do that, so I would become anxious. So when we know who we are in any given situation, it becomes very grounding for us. We know who to be and how to be. We talked before about external persona, how we show ourselves to the world. When we know who we are in a specific situation, then it becomes easy. If we go into a new situation, a first date, a job interview, or we've got to give a speech at a wedding, we don't know how we should be in that situation, it can make us feel anxious. We also need to know, and our brain, our subconscious mind is telling us who the other people are around us. And that if we've got an idea, a model, a relationship with that person, then we know how to interact with that person. It feels easy. When we meet somebody for the first time, or we go into a different situation and a different environment, we don't know who the other people are and how to relate to them, then that again can make us feel anxious. So our subconscious mind is constantly working out who we are and who the other people are around us. And it is doing that instinctively and intuitively and outside of our conscious awareness. Then we need to think about what needs. Human beings are driven by the needs that we have at any given time. Throughout the course we'll be talking about needs and drive states and moving towards the things that we need and why sometimes that can feel difficult. So in any situation, our brain will be using something called an organismistic valuing system. What needs are out there for us to meet, what's important to us in this situation, and how can we go out and make those needs. And that's working with that section of what's important. You know, is this thing that we're going to do, or we're asking our brain to do, sufficiently important to us? Or is there another need that we have on the inside that is more relevant, more important to us right now? And sometimes that's an area that we really struggle with. Let's take an example of going to exercise, going to the gym, going to an exercise class versus not going to the exercise class or going to the gym and perhaps sitting on a phone and scrolling through. Now we may describe that experience as being procrastination, but it may be that our subconscious mind has decided that the need for rest and relaxation is more important at that moment than going to expend a load of energy doing exercise. So it's made us, if you want to think of it in those terms, sit down and rest rather than giving us the drive state to go out and exercise. So we have who we are, who the other people are, what situation we find ourselves in, what needs we have, what is important to us in the moment. And then we have a whole chunk of memories. We have life experience and a prediction based on that. Where our subconscious mind can tap into nearly every event that's ever happened to us that has been significant and draw a prediction from what has gone on before as to what might happen in the future. Our brains are prediction engines. We're constantly thinking about what might happen next and how those internal resources that we have available to us can be allocated. So they are the main psychological processes that we have within our subconscious mind, and then there's a whole chunk around pre-programming. Now, as an adult, you don't think about how to brush your teeth, how to tie your shoes, how to write your name, how to wash dishes, how to peel a potato. You know all of these things and you feel that you can do it without even thinking. That we have this it's called a central pattern generator. We know how to do something. I used to play golf. I don't play golf anymore. I was okay back then. Now if I picked up a golf club, my pre-programming of how to swing a golf club would have been completely lost and I would be back to being rubbish again. That any programming that we don't use gradually passes away. But we also have huge pre-programming about mindset, that we know how to be in a certain situation. And if we don't have pre-programming, then it can make us feel quite anxious. If you have that, let's take my example of playing golf again. If I went to go and play golf again, I would find that incredibly difficult because I don't have the pre-programming stored in my brain would have let that go. So I would find that quite agitating, quite jarring. Not just because of the frustrations of playing golf, it's because my brain would have to go into that concentration state in order to relearn that skill. Now you might be thinking playing golf or tying shoelaces, washing dishes isn't relevant to a conversation about anxiety, but when we think about neuroplasticity, how the brain learns and how the brain unlearns, that our anxiety is a pre-program that we already have. So we need to learn how that has got in there as a pre-program and what we can do to unlearn that. So throughout the MindWorks with Craig in the full course, when we look at trauma, we're going to be looking at neuroplasticity, what the brain does in order to learn and unlearn, and what tools we can deploy and use and understand in changing the pre-programming that we have in our brain. That's an area that I find absolutely fascinating because we are in a constant state of learning and unlearning. So for now, what we're talking about now is how we can understand our own emotional state at any given moment. And what I'm principally talking about for today is if I were to ask you how you feel, and if somebody to ask me how I feel right now, generally the answer that we give is okay. And if I say, how do you feel really? You might embellish that, you might give a more detailed answer. If we were sitting in a therapy setting and you were my one-to-one client, we may have a different conversation about the things that have happened in that week and how that relates to the things that we talked about previously. If you were sitting with a friend that knows what's going on in your life, the good things, the bad things, the indifferent things, you might give more detail. What I think is essential for us, those of us that have mental health challenges or have had mental health challenges, or the type of person like me that needs to proactively work on their mental health, is that sometimes we ask ourselves that question, how am I feeling right now? And we go, yeah, I'm okay. If you ask me that right now, I'm okay. I'm breathing out and in, I'm standing up, and there's electric on the meter and food in the fridge. Yeah, I'm okay. But it's much more subtle than that. There have been times in my life where I felt absolutely fantastic and absolutely amazing. And there have been times in my life where, sadly, that hasn't been the case at all, and I felt desperately anxious and struggling with acute mental health challenges. So there is this spectrum that we can go up and down throughout the course of our life. And what I see in myself and in others is that sometimes we overestimate where we are actually in the present moment. So the meditation practice that I have for you is to get a more detailed, more visceral understanding of what is going on for you psychologically, physiologically, physically, and how you feel in a more detailed way. That isn't to make you feel bad, it's more about connecting with your own individual, perhaps we might call it subconscious experience or emotional experience through a quite short, quite focused meditation type self-hypnosis practice. Now, I believe that's absolutely essential, because we need to have a relationship, if you like, to what is going on the inside. That in order for us to change, to understand and therefore to manage and therefore to work towards overcoming anxiety, we need to know where the start point is. If we just say to ourselves, or you say to others, how do you feel right now? Yeah, I feel okay. And you don't, or that there is anxiety starting to build within you, or there are things that are bothering you in terms of that overthinking, that double thinking that we talked about before, then in my view and in my opinion, we start to open the door much more widely to experiencing more anxiety more intently, more potently later on down the line. If we think of anxiety as being our own internal alarm system, that protective self that we talked about earlier on in the earlier video, is that it is an alarm. It is trying to bring our attention to the fact of we're trying to be someone out the outside that we're not on the inside, or that there are things in our environment or our relationships that we're not happy with. And that if we sit and use a meditation practice like this and just listen to what is going on the inside, and we give ourselves a much more effective start point in order to move forward positively and proactively with that mindset of responsibility for ourselves on the inside. So that meditation is coming up on the next section. You can scroll down and you'll find it. A few points about meditation as a practice throughout my conversations that I have with my clients. That meditation is a practice. It isn't something that we can ever perfect. That every time we sit down to do a meditation practice, it will be different. And that we should try and take it as it comes, as opposed to sitting down and expecting to have a deep, relaxing or transcendental experience. Sometimes the benefits of meditation are simply sitting down and giving yourself some time to conserve energy. Your brain is using a huge amount of energy from your eyesight, as we talked about earlier, in processing the information that's coming in through your senses. So sitting with your eyes closed helps to conserve somewhere in the region of 15 to 25% of the energy that your brain is using processing the information that's coming in through your external senses. Another comment that often we hear about meditation is that you sit to do a meditation type practice and that you can't stop thoughts, that it almost feels that as soon as you sit down and try to relax, that there is this almost tsunami of thoughts that wash over you. You're not meant to stop your thoughts. It is impossible. Even if you achieve some sort of state of transcendental enlightenment, your brain will still have thoughts. We talked about that earlier, the default mode network, the regions of your brain that switch on when you become into a more neutral or relaxed or idle state. So whilst your brain is working, it is perfectly natural for some thoughts to still arise. It may be the more you practice, you find the experience of those thoughts reduces, or it becomes a more calming experience. But when you start, that's unlikely. So you're not meant to stop your thoughts. The practice of meditation is coming back to the practice itself. So in the guided session that you've got coming up for you, it is simply to, if you find your mind wander, just come back to the things that I'm suggesting if you're finding those to be useful and beneficial. And to take it as it comes. It's going to be different every time you practice. You may have the session that I've got planned for you in the next video and the next section of the course is a tool that you can use regularly in order to build a better understanding, better connection to what is going on for you in terms of your emotional state. So that is intended to be different every time that you practice it. And it's more, the overall practice of meditation is about tuning into your own experience rather than trying to achieve some state of relaxation. Hopefully it will be relaxing, but I'm afraid to say that isn't guaranteed, and the relaxation that we can get from meditation is essentially a byproduct of the practice itself. It is more about thinking about what is going on for us, having in this type of practice a connection with our own subconscious mind. And I'll talk you through that from a self-hypnosis perspective on the meditation session itself, and to give you that better insight into your actual experience. Now, meditation, I believe it to be completely safe. It's a practice where you sit with your eyes closed and that you look to understand the thoughts that are going on for you. If for any reason you're unsure if meditation, self-hypnosis is right for you, please do come and speak to me before practicing that, and we can have a one-to-one conversation about any concerns that you have. So, thanks very much. Please do give that meditation a go. It's best enjoyed with headphones. There's some background music that will help you to get into that meditative state easier. It's about 10-15 minutes or so long. To just try and find a space where hopefully you won't be disturbed for that period of time, and take it as it comes. Just listen to the very simple suggestions, follow them if you choose, and I'd love to know your feedback and how you get on with it. Thanks very much. I've got a final video for you to wrap everything up about this course, about this short course, and tell you a little bit more about the longer term courses that I have for you here at the Mind Works with Craig. Please do have a go with that meditation and join me for that last video. I'll see you then. Thanks.